Welcome to Finding Zen with Michael Pottern, where everyday moments become sacred. I'm your host, Michael Pottern. Together, we explore how presence shows up in people's lives and the quiet gifts they reveal themselves to be when we truly pay attention. So take a breath, settle in, and let's hear what presence has to say.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Morris. I'm a retired Green Beret veteran, like a lot of you. And today we're going to talk a lot about my veteran story, my journey over my 21 years in service, and then post, and a lot of the things that I've experienced. And I hope that for the audience and for a lot of you, this kind of opens things up for you and allows you to see the world in maybe a slightly different perspective or a different light as you're going through your own veteran journey or your own civilian journey.
Welcome, everybody, to the Finding Zen podcast. Today, I have a good friend, Chris Morris, here. We are going to get into some really beautiful conversations around the military and what it means to be a leader in today's society. But let's just first start with the breath, Chris.
Sounds good.
And let's see what presence has to say.
Mm-hmm.
So welcome.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. Chris is a CEO of Level 3 Consulting, retired Green Beret Lieutenant Colonel, 20 years plus in the security space, and also graduated from West Point with an MBA from University of North Carolina.
Yes, sir.
It's a pretty impressive background. But
that old guy did a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
The younger guy was busy.
So let's just kind of start from, I guess, the beginning. I met you about a year ago, just over a year now. Yeah. And, really, we've been able to kind of explore a space of your journey through the military and also kind of that time, when you get out and you're like, okay, I thought I had everything figured out. And then you're like, okay, so much of that structure isn't there. Yeah. And what also has maybe been under the hood, running on a little bit of a high octane without a lot of the oil that's needed and and just where that's brought you today.
Absolutely. Where do you want me to start? How far back do you want me to go?
Let's just start from the beginning. What you think is most meaningful?
We can go in whatever direction makes sense. So just like interrupt me with questions. But that makes sense. I'll go back a ways. I kind of go back to like commissioning time. That was 2000. I graduated from West Point in 2000. That's my year group. And so, I was a kid that grew up in the 90s. 90s kid, Central Jersey. I played sports. I have a sister, suburban kid. And it was great. My parents are still alive, and I talk to them often, see them a little less because they're still in Jersey. So, my pathway to the military was, let's say, like not necessarily not standard. It just wasn't, I think, as kind of natural as a lot of other folks may have. My dad served in the reserves during Vietnam, never deployed. My grandfathers both had touched service, I think both in the Navy, at least I know on the Morris side. But again, very limited, military history in the family. And so, when West Point became a thing that I was interested in, the questions always asked is like, did you have family members that went in the military and things like that? It's like, no, not really. My sister did follow, which was awesome. But yeah, I was a 3-sport athlete in high school, and I did a year of prep before I went to West Point just because I wasn't ready to go. Then we graduated, and again, generally peacetime world, and 9/11 happens.
We'll take a break there.
And it's one of those, I think, if you rewound it and we were it's 1999, I'm getting ready to graduate, and we're talking about service and how long I'm going to stay in. I'm probably a 5 and out. West Pointers are required to do 5 years. And so I'm probably, hey, I did 5. That was great. And then I'm moving on with life, whatever that is at that point. So, I spent my first year at Fort Benning, Georgia, the school for boys. the Benning School for Boys, as it's been called by some folks. And I did Ranger training, airborne training, basic course for it was an infantry. I commissioned as an infantry officer. So I went through about a year of schooling, and finished in July of 2001. Got to Fort Hood, Texas, which was where 4th Infantry Division was stationed at that point. Now we know a lot of them. We know now that they're at Fort Carson, but it was split then. And so get down 4th ID, get my first platoon, which is what you do as a lieutenant, and then September 11th. I was coming out of I was doing a pre-ranger for some of our soldiers. I was driving out that morning, having done a night walk, and get home. I'm listening to the radio with a couple of guys that I was doing the training with. We were driving out of there, instructors. We had done shift change, and they picked the students up, and we're starting to drive home to recover for the day. And there's the I don't know, the War of the World stuff on the radio at that point. If those that can think back to the 50s, and it's like the radio, they're hitting the tower, and it's like, is this am I missing something? There's a comedy show going on. I grew up in that area, so I'm not unfamiliar. And so I get home, we turn the TV on, and the world's on fire. Yeah, I lost a high school friend in the tower, in the South Tower that day. Our wrestling buddy Dave Suarez.
So that kind of gets you, I think, kind of amped up and probably pretty hyper vigilant.
Yeah.
And let's, I think, kind of start there now that we have some foundation. You were very high functioning, but I think often those people that are high functioning are usually hiding some things.
Yeah. And it's a lot easier to see now. It's your job. That's the job. Yeah. Anybody that enters into that space, in the infantry and the ranger space and the special operations side of things, it's an obsession. If you're not obsessed, you're not going to do well.
Yeah.
And so, it was like hiding things. No, I was just not doing anything else at that point. It was all that all the time. That was the full focus. And for most of 20 years, to be quite honest, that's kind of how my career went. And the obsession only grew over time. I did my first deployment in 2002. I did my last deployment in 2019, 14 total. And I did most of those. I was only in the staff jobs really later in my career. So most of those were on teams, in platoon time or on teams. And so tactical level combat, a lot of it. And over time, it just, it's like redlining the engine 24/7, 365. I really saw the first cracks after my first special forces trip in 2006. So that was my third deployment and my first on a team. And I came home and I felt it and I could see it. And it was the first time that like a suicidal thought had ever entered my head. Was into I don't remember what month, but it was when we came back in 2007. It was a rough trip for us. It was definitely busy. We were just north of Kandahar, and and it was one of those. It was just it just started to creep in, and at that point, there wasn't much awareness. Nobody was talking about any of the mental health burdens and things. It is funny. I'll never forget. And Bob is still alive. So Bob Babcock, who's still a dear friend. Bob is he's probably in his 80s now. I'm probably going to say, Bob, love you. But Bob's in his late 70s, early 80s. I may be giving him a couple years here. So Bob was a 4th ID. He was in 122 Infantry, which is my first unit in 4th ID. Bob was a Vietnam vet. So it was really cool because when we deployed in 2003 it was the invasion of Iraq. So 4th ID, we went on that. I was a scout platoon leader, which is really interesting place to be at that point. And what was really cool is the Vietnam vets from that unit actually came out and sent us off. Yeah. And see, they recognized what was coming. Yeah.
I want to appreciate that you kind of spoke to that. It's not hiding something. Because I think it's important that people in all kinds of different directions are showing up in ways, whether you're a parent and just doing all you can for your child and just sacrificing everything. This is where the redlining happens. So great.
Yeah, it was. Yes, and yes, and
Mm-hmm.
even then, I had I had a staff sergeant who was a golfing buddy, Stu. Him and his wife were just like, I was a lieutenant. I was a single lieutenant, right? I was like 23 at that point, living in an apartment with a buddy. And so like, they kind of took me, Stu and his wife took me under their wing. We played some golf and they were just friends, and he's a Desert War vet. And I was so excited when we got the word for the initial invasion, right? Mm-hmm. Like irresponsibly excited, I would say at this point now, unknowing, right? You just don't, you know what you know. I was like, we're going to, finally, it's about time. Like, we're going to war. I'm going to get to cut my teeth. And like with my guys, with my platoon, that's what we trained for. And yeah, like, I'm still glad that we got to do what we did. And I'm proud of the way that we operated for 20 years, on all the different teams. I'm a lot more reserved about that now. Mm-hmm. And it's not as exciting. Mm-hmm. And because the consequences now. I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that share, and I'm feeling you right now. And
yeah. No, we're great.
Good.
Yeah.
So we're I think that this then leads us into is kind of that awareness that everything isn't okay.
Yeah.
And what that journey starts to look like, because I know that you've explored multiple different therapies. Yeah. and kind of just give me a little landscape there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I rode the lightning for years, right? That's what I'll call it, because that's what I was doing. Drinking a lot in between deployments. And so it's an interesting like little sine curve, whereas you go on deployment, there's no drinking. And I wasn't like, and there's a lot of guys in the community that be like, oh, I kept drinking on deployments. Like I didn't. It's very rare on a deployment over like those years. We're not supposed to be, and every once in a while there was a drink shared, but it was usually over a fallen brother. And so like I wasn't. But when I got home, I sure as hell made up for it. And in the in-betweens, it's just numb, right? And escape, because there wasn't a whole lot of other options. And I'm talking about really between 2006 and 2015. In 2015, I moved jobs. I moved over to a more special headquarters. And, I realized at that point I was in a staff position. I had a little bit of space from leadership, because again, that's the thing that I think a lot of folks lose track of is I was in a leadership position, not like gladly most of my career. I really got my first staff position in 2020 at the end of 2014. Mm. So for 14 years outside of training, I was in a leadership job, right? I was in a command job. Grateful. I got two, I was a commander of 2 special forces teams. All right. I was a platoon leader for almost 3 years. I was a company commander for a year on a deployment. As a special forces company commander, right? So that's 90 plus Green Berets.
Yeah.
It was awesome. And came out of it and like didn't take too long, maybe about a year before I just could see like the cracks in the wall, like really see them. Had some buddies around too that were like, yeah, man, like it's like, and they were in the same boat. It was like, yeah, buddy, like it's rough. And this is kind of the beginning. 14, 15 was when reaching out for help, and I wouldn't call it that because I don't think that's what we do well. We don't reach out for help. We find answers. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the messages that is important is everyone's like, oh, like you can't reach out for help. And it's like, I'm a fucking Green Beret. I don't reach out for any help from anybody, right? I've been tested, selected, and I am designed to operate with a small team or by myself, period. So like this whole like little narrative of like, oh, it just need to make it so guys can reach out for help. Fuck you would be my response to most of those people, because you have no fucking idea like what we're about and how we work. more importantly, if I need help, I'm looking for solutions. Right. And so that's the difference is I'm out there, it's like, well, you guys should ask for help and all that. And it's like, yeah, it's just not how we work. So I started looking for solutions, and I went down the conventional therapy route. I started with a unit psychologist over at the Joint Special Operations Command, where I'd moved to as a staff guy. And I'd sat down and just said, hey, I've got quite a few things to unpack. And I think at that point, let me just think about it for a second. I probably had I had probably 10 or 11 deployments at that point.
Wow.
Yeah. It was it was seasoned, we'll call it, right? Seasoned, highly seasoned with salt. Yeah. So, and I'll never forget Belinda. She was awesome. And I hope if she's out there, she's doing great. But she had a ton of experience with special operators. She was not unfamiliar, and sat me down, and we had a nice talk, and we had a couple sessions. And my biggest concern was, I'm like, hey, I don't want to be medicated. I'm like worried about that from a deployment sense, and right, like that's where the head is, the obsession. We come back to the obsession. Where's the obsession? The obsession is the deployments. It's the combat. It's what we're fighting. It's the foe. And it was like, I can't miss a trip. I have to be ready to go in the global sense for whatever the unit needs us to do. And so it's like, okay, I'll talk, but if you can't give me medicines that will keep me off the deployment train. Understood, right? Amongst the command, everybody knew. And so we talked, we worked on some, I would say like the basic stuff that you do, like just, de-escalate, work through feelings, work through, I would say not as good as we are now, but it's like there wasn't much breath work or things like that involved, but it was a place to at least unpack some stuff, and be honest about honest isn't the right word. Honest isn't the right word. Be a little bit more open to what was really going on in the background, right? The really dangerous dark spots, the things that were just like you're drowning in. In 2014, it was a busy deployment for Charlie Company, 2nd Battalion, 3rd Group. That was my job. I was the commander. We lost 4 guys that trip, which is a lot. Any guy, but 4 is a lot. And I lost a really dear friend that trip too. And so, yeah, came home with a lot. Just moved jobs, right? And kind of just bounced, it was like, say goodbye to the fellas at the team, went up to be an OPSO for the battalion, and, just sat with a lot. And then I moved over headquarters, and that's when I think, I can see it now. I couldn't see it at the time. So I can explain it a little bit better. I transitioned out of the unit that I've been with for years. I mean, I got the 3rd Special Forces Group in 2006, and I left in 2015. I had one interruption. I got to go to grad school. I got to do naval postgrad. So I have 2 master's degrees, right? Which most people are like look at you, they're like, yeah, like I'm a highly educated knuckle dragging like person, right? And so that was like a 1.5 year break, in Monterey, California, and then immediately deployed and went back. It was just like this, like little. It was beautiful. It was really good. I got more time with my family, and that was great. And Monterey's beautiful. But I never really arrived there, and I can see that. We were in Monterey physically. My head was in Afghanistan. My head was always in Afghanistan. My head was where the deployed unit is always going to be. During that time at Naval Postgrad, one of my like longtime teammates, Joe Shiro, got killed. Right. And I remember standing on my front porch, getting the phone call, and man, that crushed. That was crushing. Joe was the first one that really crushed me. We had lost friends and like along the way, but Joe was he was one of, and I know as a leader, I'm speaking to a few other fellas that are out there as well, because they had the same experience. Like Joe was one of our kids. He was a young guy. Joe had been on teams as a much younger guy, and we recognized the talent he had, and he was such a special person. And he was a staff sergeant when he was with me, and he was rising, and he decided, I'm going to be a warrant officer. And so he went to be a warrant officer with everybody's blessing, right? And he was leading his team, and he got shot in the chest. And it's just, it's like, yeah, I miss Joe to this day. But that one, man, boy, that one hurt. And I realized, like, and I can look, that's kind of that moment I can look back and go, I never really left. I was in Monterey physically, but my head never was. I did my schoolwork, right? Like, no, but my head was never there. It was everything I was doing was focused on our next trip, right? I was studying books. I was writing papers. I was taking classes that were focused on how we could win more, how we could be more lethal. What could we do to gain an advantage? Whether it was culturally, whether it was tactically, it didn't matter. Right. Every avenue at that point. Grad school was about like becoming more of an effective weapon than anything else. And there was some nice breaks, of course, and there were some nice walks on the beach and some opportunities. But now I see what it was the obsession only grew and grew and grew. And so, it's like, I come out of that, that experience, and I get to 2015, and I'm able to unpack some of this with Belinda, and we talk through, but I knew my time was limited there. And I knew I didn't necessarily know, but I could just sense like this was going to be a limited application of like, it was like when we say healing, I'm like, I didn't even understand what that meant at that point. So it was just like, hey, like, I kind of went in there almost like you go into like a physical therapist and be like, hey, like this hurts. Like, can you like rub on that and make that better? Right. And, like that was kind of my application of like whatever the tool was at that point. And like she did the best she could. With the tools that she had and really with what I provided her with. But like I would say that, that was great. And then I left and I left JSOC and I took my last job in the Army, which was the headquarters battalion command job at Fort Carson. So, come in here thinking, okay, fresh start, different unit, and part of it, I was like, okay, maybe getting away from special operations for a couple of years is going to be helpful. Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I never really got away. You just never really get away. And not because I wanted to get away from the guys. I love my guys and love all my friends. I just wanted to kind of get away from the operational tempo and some of the missions and things like that. The heaviness that goes along with being in a headquarters that's 24/7, 365. And, I just didn't understand it until I actually got there. I thought we were busy when I was at Special Forces Group. And then I went to JSOC and learned like really what the global fight looks like and what the day-to-day, and it's 24/7, 365. And I'm like proud to be a member, proud to be an alumni, proud of what they're doing today. That is the most functional operational headquarters in the world. There's no question in my mind. So it's really cool to be on like what I would say is like a championship like team. It's like people talk about winning the Super Bowl, winning the Stanley Cup, and it's like, yeah, we're gonna JSOC. Like most days feels like that. Like really cool place. But let's see, I spent 3 years there. Deployed a couple times while I was there, and that was, well, the cracks in the walls became caves at that point. And, I get to Fort Carson, I take a battalion command job, which, just for the audience, it's a pretty big deal. You got to compete for it. It's highly selective. It's highly, it's like very competitive. So like, and of course, for me, I've had a lot of cool people that I've been able to work with throughout my career. And so the last thing was, the commanding general at Fort Carson at the time was a guy named General Randy George. He's a major general at the time. Well, he's the chief of staff of the Army now. He's just an impressive leader with an impressive organization. He's a fourth ID person all day long. He's been to other units, and so the culture and the camaraderie and the operational, like the focus that he has was awesome for me. I love being around him, love being around the people that we had on staff. So kind of paused like my therapy at that point, right? Kind of got here and was like, okay, like I'm good. I'm fine now. Yeah. Right. We're okay. Yep. it's all good now because I went to a different place and good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I wasn't, but I was managing with the tools that were there, which was, drinking, right? I mean, like drinking more than I definitely should have been. And hiding from all of the things that were happening in the background, all the feelings, all the thoughts, and just really at that point thinking, it'll just go away at some point. Which we know it doesn't go away. It just manifests in different ways. So, but back to, it was like, okay, well, let's be obsessed with this. So now I have a new job. So let's stay focused on, and that's it. Pour yourself into that. And that's what I did. And I did my last trip in 2019. I went over General Scott Miller, who's been a mentor for years. He was running Resolute Support. He was the last general, 4-star. I met General Miller. My first time I had to work for him in I think it was like 2010 a little bit, and then 12 and 13. And then at JSOC, he was a commander when I was there. So he came in as a 3-star, and then he went to Resolute Support and took that mission on basically until we closed it down. He was there for years. So I was a known quantity with General Miller, and General George, of course. I've been a JSOC guy for a while. So I got pulled over for a couple months to run his combined jock, which is a blessing and a curse at the same time. I'm really good at that. That is what I do. At the same time, it was just kind of that one more trip. Mm-hmm. So I came back from that. Nothing particularly, like, to me, was super triggering on that trip. It was just, that was the trip that I recognized I needed to retire, right? And it was before I left. I looked at my kids and I could see it because they knew what was going on. My kids at that point, I'm trying to think how old they were then. It was 2019. So Colin, he's my oldest. He was 10. And Isla was, she was 7, and then Ryan was like 5. Yeah. So they, like, Colin especially knew.
Very tuned.
He looked at me in the eyes and was like, "Are you going to come back?" And man, that hit like a ton of bricks. I can still see we were in his room. I can, like, see the whole thing. And I was like, that was the moment for me where I was like, I'm done. And I thought I was going to be done anyway, right? When we moved to Fort Carson, kind of as a family, it was like, all right, this is probably the last time we're going to do this. And, I knew 20 was coming. So, but man, that was it. So came back and I was like, okay, I know that I'm, like, struggling. I know that, and it's like, I've got a year basically for my last job. I got, till I'll finish this job in 2020. And then I'm going to retire. And so I was like, let's go back to I don't remember what they were calling it, but it was like the warrior, like, clinic, right? Mm-hmm. Like, everybody's got their favorite, but it's like, call it the warrior clinic. That'll make it sound cool. It's not cool.
If pushing harder is not helping anymore, it might be time for something different. Denver Zen Den uses light and sound to help your system reset. And check out our curated Mindwave collection of technology for the home. Less force, more calm. Okay, let's return to the conversation with Chris.
So I went to the Warrior Clinic, right, which is run by great people at Fort Carson, and I'm sure that they still have something there's something similar to it to this day. They're doing vestibular treatment in there. You're doing, cognitive behavioral therapy, CPT, CBT, XYZ, ABC, the whole thing. You're doing it all. EMDR wasn't as big of a thing at that point.
Okay.
But I did do EMDR. EMDR was actually one of the few modalities in that space that worked. Yeah. Right. And the hardest part I had with EMDR was finding a clinician that could actually, like, would do it. Like, I ended up, I'll come back to the earlier thought, but later on I did EMDR. I was retired, and I did one session on a scene that was, like, just bugging me from 2003. Osbaldo Orozco got killed in 2003 in a firefight, right outside of Tikrit. He was a platoon leader in 122. And I just, I hated that scene. We, as a scout platoon, had gotten pinned down. We had to call the QRF. They came in, and then they rolled a Bradley, which is what killed Osbaldo. And I just, hated that because, we asked for help, right? And they came, and then he got killed. And so like that scene always bothered me, and it's not because of anything particular. It was just like that scene. There was some other shit in the background with my battalion commander, who was a piece of shit at the time. Not Steve Russell, the guy before him. That's for the fellas, those that know. So like I went and did EMDR, and it like cleared it up to this moment. I can see that scene with like no real reaction. And then like that clinician, like I had to change. And the next one I got, this woman just wanted to talk to me. I was like, lady, just do the eye thing, right? So anyway, at Carson, I got into CBT and CPT, and I was seeing a PA who was trying to help with blood work and things like that. Because my blood work's a mess. I mean, that's the thing that's, in the background. I think that, for those that, those that are listening, going through their own journey, do your blood work fast, right? Get your blood, because that's going to tell you right off the bat, like immediately, especially now, it's very well known. It's like, what are the markers? What are the different things? My core was always a nightmare, and everything in between was a mess. I mean, I'm 175 pounds. I probably have 10, 11% body fat. I have high blood pressure. I mean, and it's like, wait, this doesn't add up. Right. And you're like, I'm sitting in front of the PA is Tim, who still works with special forces and things like that. And I'm like, Tim, like, listen, man, like I'm still in the elite level, like for my age group. Yet my blood work is telling you that like I'm 60 and I need like blood pressure meds and I need all these other things. And it's like, so honestly, I was like, Tim was like, all right, well, let's try a few things to try to see if we can kind of get this under control. And we did some of that, some blood pressure meds and some low, like a water pill, some low things that were just, to try to like, just kind of like reset things. Right. It was like kind of a reset, doing the behavioral therapy and then doing vestibular therapy. Right. Cause part of my challenge is I have a lot of traumatic brain injury. I think SOCOM classified me with like 5,000 plus like lifetime TBIs coming out of service. Some with really, really like some really severe instances. So, it's like, yes, I'm rated, for PTSD. Yes, I have TBI, right? Like, okay, I did 14 deployments. So not really like a shock to anybody. But it's the way those things interact is that like over the years, what I've learned is, a lot of TBI related symptoms look behaviorally like challenging.
Yes.
And you get treated for behavioral issues that are more TBI related. And this is 2020, where, it's like we're still learning, but we definitely didn't know what we know today. And so I'm doing vestibular treatments and trying to like work it out. And, at the time, like the clinical approach was, like you can build up the vestibular muscle, which I don't know, like I kind of moved away. I don't really pay as much attention to the research on that right now because I don't think for TBI, it's necessarily like important for me. Mm-hmm. But like at the time, it was like, all right, well, just get in there and like shake your head back and forth really hard, and like you'll be dizzy, but it'll like then you like lifting biceps. You're like, all right, I'm really sore, but I'm getting stronger. Mm-hmm. And it's like, yeah, for me, it was like I'm out back like throwing up and like feeling like ass and just going into these sessions literally like like walking, like sitting in the parking lot before a session and being like, this is gonna suck. This is gonna suck. This is gonna suck, right? And it's like, all right, I'm gonna go in there for 45 minutes and like just work as hard as I can. And I know I'm going to come out. And like, I mean, there was times when I'd be sitting in the car and I was like, it'd take me an hour to go. I couldn't drive home because I was like just spinning and things were going sideways. And the PTs and the clinicians in there would tell you like, all right, like we're not supposed to go that hard, but it's like, it's hard when you hit the threshold to know where you're going to go. Right. And it's like, oh shit, I just tipped and now I'm like upside down and spinning. Right. So, like, I'm in Stillness Battalion Command, and I'm like every week I'm like kind of sneaking over to this appointment, spending 2 hours over here, throwing my guts up out in the back, like, and just like coming back going, all right, I'm getting better, get better. And you fast forward to, it's like, okay, March 1st is my retirement date. So I'm retired 5 years, like March 1st of this year. So not too long ago. So fast forward to December of 2020. I'm on terminal leave. I'm moving on with my life, and I end up with a gun to my head. And there's a lot of circumstances behind that, and there's definitely some family things associated with that have nothing to do with service. But without like getting too far down that road, it was like, this isn't working. And then I think the really interesting part to me was, and this is where I really shame the people that are like, ask for help because you'll get all the help you need. Well, let me tell you a story. So I end up inpatient, so on the 5th floor of Evans Army Hospital for a couple nights after what was a pretty serious suicidal ideation. Again, I think anytime a special operator has a gun to their head with the slack pulled up on a trigger, it's pretty dangerous.
Yes.
And that's exactly where I was. And I called a buddy, an old-time friend. You know him, Dave. Yeah. And Dave shit talked me until I put the gun away. That's what people don't know, right? He talked shit to me, which is hilarious. And he was like, you can't do this. Come on, don't be a dumbass. And he like gave me some other things that I'll keep to myself because they're just between us. But I laughed my ass off. I locked and cleared, and I was good. I was good moving on, right? Yeah. But I knew I needed some help. So I went to I was like, all right, well, now you have to go up and get put in the jammies and the socks. All right, well, let me tell you about my experience with this. I'm a retiring lieutenant colonel. I'm post battalion command. I'm up on the 5th floor because nobody knows what to do with me. I asked to go to a civilian hospital, right? I tried to check myself into a civilian hospital, and the hospital commander down at Carson, for whatever reason, not knowing me, decided he could like pull me down to Carson because, and this is about money, promise you, they could treat me. So after about an hour up there, I recognized that this was just lockdown. And this was the whole purpose of this was to make everybody else feel better about the situation. And I mean, I got stone cold told by the people up there, like, there's no meds. We can't do anything for you. We're just going to talk to you and make you feel better. And then you'll get out and you'll get the real treatment you need. As I heard that over and over again. Basically, it's just behave so that we can release you to the treatment.
Yeah.
I did my best to behave.
Well, I want to pause for a second, just because you touched on a number of things, of course, there. Cool. And I think that's important to really double click on this concept of, just ask for help. Yeah. And why isn't this working from an outside perspective looking in? And I think that, mental health right now, every tranche of it is different. Yeah. And I think it's really meaningful to start to really look from a different perspective versus I know what's best as a doctor or, usually people that are pushing different modalities. And what I love that you touched on with, EMDR specifically, I think it's an amazing therapeutic thing is that, the talk therapy side of it, though, wasn't working for you. So let's actually then approach it the way that we give you the right tools. And that even, when you talked about just going into the therapist, that, you were sharing what you would want to share. It wasn't, the full picture because you were very much trained to do that. And I think that so many people, think that, oh, well, this could just be solved. And I think we need to really re-examine how we're approaching those solutions and actually, empowering the people from within that have actually done the work, and gone through their own shit.
Talking about it never helped. I'll say that to this day, and I don't give a shit who wants to challenge me. Talking about it has never fucking helped. I've never walked out of a clinical session with any kind of a therapist, right? And I still go. I have I have a therapist I trust. He's somebody that I've worked with for a while now, right? And it's like we talk through things that help me move on. We don't just unpack scenes that are bothering me, right? And a lot of this turns into, well, let's relive all your combat trauma, right? I went through cognitive behavioral therapy. I was doing that in 2019, kind of what I described, right? And this is kind of how it went for me. I would do my homework, right? And I think that was part of problem was that I was like, I will do the work, right? I always show up and do all the work. So I would sit at my dining room table and I would sob for hours. I mean, to the point where I'd be like, oh, I need a new piece of paper, right? Like it was like, and I'm reliving it. It's like, what are you doing? Getting better, right? And I would finish an hour of writing about it, and it's like, nah, I wasn't better, right? Because then I was like, I can't deal with. I mean, I'm spinning, losing my mind, and it's like, okay. So then what do you do? Well, I'm like, great. Well, I'm going to sit down on the couch on a Saturday afternoon now, and I'm going to watch golf, and I'm going to drink.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to sit quietly. You know, that's the thing. Like, I just sat quietly and would just drink until it numbed.
And thank you, Dave, for reaching out to our brother here, because that's the other part I really wanted to touch on is, people that, seemingly have it all together are often the people that don't reach out for help when they need it. And it's almost the converse of it. It's more that I want to, just fully disconnect from everything. And that usually just numbs the situation, that just kicks the can a little bit. Sure. And so by Dave reaching out and saying, hey, I know how to communicate with you. I know how to,
I called Dave. I mean, that's where it's like, I did reach out to a brother then. And he, I mean, that's where it's like, you have your friends, you have your ride and die people that And I called Dave in the middle of the night, and he answered the phone.
Yep. Yeah. And I just empower that type of support and actually acknowledgement to those friends that, are those ride or dies, because that empowers them to have permission to say, hey, I'm getting a sense something's off, instead of just you having to reach out. So just a lot there. Yeah.
And it's hard. It's hard if you're on the friend side of things, because it's not always a clear tripwire sign. It's like I can see it now, and I've supported a lot of friends through some tough times over the last few years myself, and realizing it's really hard to see where the goalposts are. Even the person that's on the other end of the phone doesn't necessarily know where the goalposts are. And so, earlier is better, of course, right? But it doesn't mean that, like, an hour before it's like, oh, Chris was good. And an hour later, you're not. And it just manifests that quickly. And so, just understanding, less judgment, amongst, especially amongst, what I can say is in the community, if I call a brother, it's a team aspect. Right. Dave looks at me as a teammate. I look at Dave as a teammate. So it's like, well, I'm not going to help a teammate. Well, yeah, of course I'm going to help a teammate, and I'm going to keep my mouth shut about it.
And that's the other part is I believe that there's that safety and, what gets shared. Right. And also, advice is cheap. Presence is hard. Yeah. And that's what I'm hearing is, people that are showing up saying, I don't know the solution, but I'm here with you.
Yeah, I don't think anybody has the answers at this point. Yeah. I mean, like, let's be honest. There's definitely things that are better, the things that have worked better. But, there's not no tried and true, like answer to this. And that's where it's a frustrating part to this moment is that there's still folks out there, especially, and they're mostly outsiders. But a lot of these people can be providers or associated with providing. And it's like, well, if you just do this, then you'll be good. Mm-hmm. Right. And then the finger pointing starts when it's like, well, you let your schedule get out of whack, and then you started drinking too much. And then, of course, you're going to be suicidal now. It's like, well, I know a pile of guys that have the potential that follow that same model that are fine. So, I don't love the little like hypotheses and all these little like experimental like observations that, it's like, listen, if we had an answer, we wouldn't be seeing the rates of suicide we're seeing amongst veterans, like, continue to climb. It's a fact. Because everybody needs something that's a little bit different. Yeah.
So what else are you seeing in the current environment that is supportive?
Yeah. So, for me, like fast forwarding on my story. So, like I retired, and then, I started the business and started working. Right. distraction, obsession. Fast forward, doing therapy. I'm on a lot of meds at this point, pharmaceutical meds. So, I'm on things to help with all of my TBI symptoms. You can imagine TBI looks a lot like ADHD. So a lot of those medicines associated with those kind of things are things that you might treat TBI with. And then there's some really hardcore like antidepressants and things like that. And so, I've had my experience with a lot of that. And initially I thought it was a bridge. I guess like this goes back to, let me finish that part of the 2020 story because it kind of leads into this is I came off inpatient treatment for suicidal like behavior, right? And I couldn't get a doctor to touch me. Nobody would I was too high risk. Yeah. Nobody on Fort Carson would touch me, right? I had to find somebody on the outside that would take a chance. And I did. He's a West Pointer. He had a clinic. He had great people in there and he took me on and saved me, gave me a bridge. But I realized even at that point, and it was like, I can't take all this stuff for the rest of my life. So what's like the next answer, right? I mean, it's like, now I'm the guy. I mean, I look the way I look, right? I'm the same thing. I'm still working out. I'm doing all the things I'm doing. Now I got this like pile of pills in front of me. And you're like, great, right? Some to help sleep, some to help depression, some to help anxiety, some to help, right? And you're like, oh man, okay. Right. It's like, I got enough TBI that I can't keep track of all this stuff. So I'm working through this. We're doing talk therapy, right? I think this is the way, my household at that point, I'm still married and, would say that like, be careful who you marry, guys. Because I think, that was not the most healthy environment either. And then you add the pills and then you add the potential for, well, that's the solution, right? The judgment starts inside the relationship. And it's like, hey, listen, this doesn't feel good anymore. Yeah. And it was like, well, wait a second, it's my life, right? Yeah. But it wasn't. So it get to April of 24. My wife at the time takes me to the emergency room. And, like thinks this is the solution, right? After this many years is like, we're going to take you to the emergency room, which wasn't the solution. And they released me immediately because I wasn't suicidal. I was sad. And so that's kind of why I was like, I'm done with the pills. I'm flushing all this shit, right? And I'm just going to go back to riding the lightning until I figure it out. Now, a few things have changed. Gotcha. I don't drink anymore. I stopped drinking in 2020. My last drink was after that night, and I'll never drink again. And it's an easy choice for me. But then I lead into what I get kind of like just the way the spirit works is I end up with an opportunity to do psychedelics, a psychedelic assisted therapy. And for me, that was the first thing that cracked the nut. So I went out to a place called the Do Good Ranch. I did a hero dose. I did the prep work leading in. I did the prep work coming out of it. And I'd say those are really important. It's not just the medicine. It's the prep work and the coming out of it work that has to be done. Mm-hmm. But it opened me up to it. And it looks a lot like the normal therapies you do. The difference is the medicine in the middle. And since then, it wasn't just a one and done. Since then, I've done a few other ceremonies, both supporting and supporting myself. And that's been the answer for me. And like to this moment, like life hasn't gotten any easier. But like it's settled and it's focused and it's calm and I'm centered. And yeah. And the tone that you hear in my voice is the tone that people hear every day.
You just softened.
Which is different.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the full spectrum that we got to cover today. Yeah. And I'm going to just tug at that last part, though, because it is something that you and I connect on. Yeah. Obviously, creating these non-ordinary states, and you spoke to it. It's still involving the other therapies. Mm-hmm. So it's not just saying, this is the thing. It's the thing that creates the non-ordinary state or this pattern interruption that then all of a sudden the subconscious and the nervous system can start communicating. Obviously these are things very dear to me. I believe that's what we're also doing with our non-psychedelic technologies.
Yeah. Can we talk about that?
Yeah.
I know we're running out of time.
No, we're good.
Yeah. So like, there's been a few things. So you're like the Zen Den was been like a lifesaver for me and has made a ton of sense in the, like I had no idea what strobotropic light was until I met you. And like the first time I sat down, I was like, again, very skeptical, of course, because I've been through a bunch of things that have been like, and immediately came out and was like, I cannot believe like the positive, like how good the results were for my just TBI alone. I mean, like I just still describe it to, like, when I talked about you and the Zen Den to folks, I'm like, listen, it's like somebody like just massaged your brain, like very gently just massaged your brain. And it's like, it's like people are like, really? I'm like, yeah. And it lasts for, it lasts for a while, but then you need a brain massage. Mm-hmm. And like every time I've done a session with you, I've come out and my brain, things have been quieter for me. It's always allowed like more openness on the therapeutical side of things where I can face, it really comes down to being able to face the scenes and deal with like the trauma that you're healing from. Yeah. And it's like the light therapies, the acoustic therapy, because it took a while, but I realized like how much was trapped in the body. And so we just did a session, right? We're playing, you're literally playing, like we're playing Korn and you're like running that down. And normally that would like, I would be here. Right. Like these are songs that it's like, right. Like, hey, let's come off a helicopter at 2 a.m. in the dark with guns against bad guys. Like, yep, let's do that. And we just did that. And it's like, I'm as calm as I've ever been. Right. Because like the disassociation, it's like, yeah, I'm listening to this. The body is like completely calm. It's wild.
And I want to express for the people that are listening to this that actually when we did that first session, it was with Metallica, yeah. Unforgiven. And, they were like, well, I would fight to do this. And I think that's the other thing is compliance. We get back to what's going to actually, be a pull forward for people to do. Okay. And instead of just this push away stuff, because it just doesn't work. We need to have more avenues that actually really feel aligned and speak the voice in a little bit of that languaging. And, if we can use music that you already have that connection to, you're going to have a trust cellularly, and you're going to then kind of quiet that monkey mind. And then that vibroacoustic can get in that much more.
It feels good. It works and it feels good. And it's not, those things are not together usually with a lot of treatments. And it's like, hey, guess what? I almost feel guilty sometimes. I'm like, this is actually making me better and we're doing this and it feels good. And I feel like, there's been enough conditioning where it's like, well, you only get better if it sucks. It's like, it doesn't, and that's the same thing with plant medicine where it was like, yeah, it sucked, right? There was definitely emotional suck. But at the end it felt better and it was calmer. And it's that peace, and it doesn't just like wear off when you stop taking that one little pill. Yeah. Like it carries.
And I also want to make sure that we're, not glamorizing the psychedelic use. It is not an overnight story.
No,
that's a whole.
And it wasn't glamorous, I promise you. It's like with a pile of tissues and a blanket, and you're like sobbing to yourself, and it's like, right? And it's like, well, I think a lot of people think it's like, well, someone else has to be there, right? It has to be like therapeutic. It's like. Yeah. No, yes, you're with the community. But that inward focus where you can go back internal and face your own shit, right? It's the only time that I've ever experienced it was plant-based, period.
That's true integration, we'll say, because if it's not a foundational thing on the inside, right. It can't be on the outside. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Chris.
Michael, thank you. It was awesome.
This has been a treat. And thank you, everybody. And just inviting you to move a little slower, listen a little deeper, and keep finding a little Zen in every day. Thank you for being here today. If our conversation opened something new for you, a little presence, a little wonder, share it with someone who might need it. Until next time, move a little slower, listen a little deeper, and keep finding the Zen in your own life.